Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Kelley Sanabria, and I welcome you. And this is our first conversation. So I can't wait to
Yes.
find out who you are and what are the things that occupy your life and what's interesting to you, and find out ways for us to have a great conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to meet you, and I'm glad that you said I can ask questions because I thought, how am I going to do this podcast interview when I just want to learn all about you and I have so many questions for you and how you got into leadership and what you're working on. So,
Oh,
um,
yeah. How about that?
share about myself and then
Yeah,
turn it
let's.
over.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then wherever we want to go, we'll go there.
Okay, cool. So I'm Kelley Sanabria, like you said. My company is Blue Morpho Leadership, and I work with leadership teams as a leadership consultant and facilitator. I've worked with leaders across public, private, nonprofit sectors. And right now, I'm really focused on what happens when really great leadership teams, really capable teams, end up pulling in different directions and feeling stuck. And so, my mission is to help those teams turn that tension into momentum instead of just continuing to manage the friction that they feel over time. So
What
that's
what,
my
what
work
do you
bio.
what,
And I'm also a mom. Mhm.
what do you mean by stuck?
So when the conflict gets in the way of the work
So were they?
getting done.
I'm really curious. We'll get to all that other stuff, but this provoked me just right out of the box. So were these leadership teams functioning well, and then all of a sudden they're not functioning well? Is that what you're telling us?
No, not necessarily. There are a lot of different factors. It could be culture, it could be a new teammate, it could be
Uh-huh.
sometimes you have executives, maybe three of them want to get the fourth one out. It could be imbalances in the company in terms of different polarities, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more. Yeah, it could be a lot of different things.
You have um, no absence of opportunity to make a difference that matters with that characterization of what you do, because that the world is filled with that.
I hope so. I hope so. And it's really a lot of human nature. Yeah. Especially right now and polarities and polarization. Yeah.
And so let's fill in the other blank. So you have a family.
Yes. I have a 13-year-old girl, an 11-year-old boy, married. Yeah.
Very good. So you're in that stage where your children are just about to break out and says, see the whole world. Oh, I want the entire world, and how can I grasp hold of that? That's great.
Yes. Yeah. It was funny. I asked my daughter last night, I said, do you think that mommy and daddy know things about the world, or you think that we just know nothing? And she was kind of kidding. And she was like, oh, you guys don't know anything. We're like, all right. Sounds about on par for your age.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's an old line that says that at age 15, the child thinks their parents don't know anything, and at 25, they are amazed at how much they've learned, how much the parents have learned. Uh, so you've got all that ahead of you.
That's probably about right. Yeah.
So you're in a sense you're. Do you have? Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you it this way. Do you see how your interest in leadership gets translated into your parenting of your children?
100%. 100%. I heard a great quote last week that was something like this, and I think it comes from Stephen Covey, but it was like, leadership is getting people to do what you want them to do while building trust. And the speaker who said it said, parenting is getting people what you want them to do while building trust. So, in terms of, yeah, just human dynamics, but also my own internal like self-management, regulation, right? Like having to deal with other humans. It's yes, absolutely parallels 100%, I think. What do you think?
Um, I think that the challenge of parenting is that we want to keep them as children as long as we want, when what we really should be doing is training them to be adults as early as possible. Because and that's what I did with
Mm.
my children. Um, when my oldest was 12 and my youngest was 5, I started not answering questions. And so they'd say, well, they'd talk about something that'd gone on somewhere they were, and they say, so why did they say that, Dad? And they expect me to have an answer and I probably did have an answer. I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? And because I wanted them to learn how to think about that, and because I wanted them to be able to address the situations that they were in, so that they would be prepared to make good decisions, good choices as they got older, and that really worked. And so now we are
That's awesome.
we're very tight, and we're very much on the same level, my children and I, but they're also not. They're very independent of me at the same time. So my sons
I
and
feel
I,
like many would describe it as the best of both worlds.
yeah. Well, and it was intentional. So it was an intentional sort of thing. And my sons and I have a 40-year-old son and a 36-year-old son, 37-year-old son, and they are both we talk almost every day. And so we're close, and we think a lot alike, and they're my chief advisors. So when I have questions I need to deal with in my own life, I'm going to them because they've been with me, well, all their lives and a vast majority of mine.
That's amazing. That's quite beautiful to have that strong of a connection with them.
Yeah, it's and it's not that it was a simple thing to achieve, or that it didn't have moments of
Mhm.
how do I say this? Not moments of conflict, but moments where we were not communicating well.
Mhm.
And we weren't, it wasn't that there was conflicts between us and therefore we were not communicating. We just weren't communicating because we weren't looking at each other. We were totally focused on other things. And all of a sudden when we come back together, oh yeah, well, we should be talking more about this. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. You get busy and then you reconnect and you're like, oh, this is nice.
So just to come back to where your children are. So when my oldest was about um, 14, maybe, um, we got involved with scouts, and within about a year and a half, I ended up as the scoutmaster of the troop, and for a host of reasons that's not relevant to this. But I told them, I said, I don't know what I'm doing here. Uh, and I said, so we're going to debrief what happens every Thursday night on our way home. Because I want you to keep your eyes open to what's happening, and I want you to tell me what you see. And that worked out really well. So we were a team from the get-go, and what emerged from that was probably my best leadership performance of my entire life.
Oh, wow.
So the way that comes back to relevance to your children is that um, they're going to be aware that the world is open to them,
Mhm.
and let them be open, and they will go through a lot of different things that they're interested in, and just let them do that and just support them. And it's my oldest, when he was 12, is it 12, um, decided I mean, so we're talking now the mid 90s, so this is a little while back, this is 30 years ago. almost 30 years ago. My oldest decided that he wanted to write, and so he wanted his own computer. And at that point in time, we only have one computer in the house, and and no smartphones. This is a different. It was a different time. So we found him a used computer, and he started writing every day for 2 or 3 hours a day, and he taught himself how to write a novel. He write novels, so he's a novelist now. And he that was a choice he made, and my other son wanted to play guitar, and he was doing band stuff, but he's a psychotherapist now, but he still plays guitar. So it's what I'm saying is that there is the opportunity you and your husband have to bring the bring your children into an awareness of the richness of the world that is available to them is right now happening. And it's the best time. I've told
I
people
love
that
that.
if I was ever to teach in scholastic, in schools, I'd want to teach middle school. So there you go.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah. It's
somewhat envious.
they're really cool years. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you for the reminder that it is happening now. I totally sense that, but it's good to hear it. It's good to hear it really clearly.
And when this comes out, you can show this to them, and you can
Mm.
so they can hear this old man talking about how great it would be to be 13 again.
Yeah, it is a fun age. It's a really unique. And I heard this thing once that I found really comforting, which is like, because the world has changed so much since when I was a teenager, also a teenager in the 90s, that they have to learn the new world with their friends and through their friends because it's a world that I don't relate to in the same way that they will. And so that's helped me to, with that normal thing that happens where they want to spend more time with their friends and less time with you and just the natural growth. It's like, okay, it's good for them. They're learning the world.
So you contrive things where you do things together that you share.
Yes.
So whatever
Yeah,
that
we're at that
means.
age. There was a meme the other day where it was yeah, well, it said something like, when your oldest kid asks you to hang out, and it was just this meme of someone like sprinting, to get to the kid. Because it's like when they want to hang out now, we take advantage and we're like, yes, oh, you want to go to Target? Okay, let's go to Target. Or you want to sit here and tell me about your friends? Like, tell me all about it. You got to really like be ready when the opportunities come.
So so how are you all handling smartphones and social media and stuff like that? What what are you doing with that?
That's been tough. So we did not get, so my oldest is 13, and she just got a smartphone. And she got it. She was supposed to get it when she was 14, but we had a goal around grades and she met her goal. So we decided that she had earned the responsibility of having a smartphone. And then we were trying to delay social media until 16, but something happened where she was able to download it on what I had. So she's on TikTok a little bit. So we're trying to monitor it the best we can, but it feels a little bit like a genie that's out of the bottle. And we've talked about, do we take it away at this point? Is that going to cause like a revolt? So in some ways I feel proud that she didn't have a smartphone until recently, because I think she was like probably one of the last in her age bracket in her grade to get one. But in the other hand, it's like, oh dang, but she's already kind of on social media and we didn't really want that. And we haven't really figured out how to manage that piece of it yet.
Yeah. I think it's the hardest thing that parents have to do today is manage that because the expectations from the child is, well, I'm old enough to have this, but are you old enough to
Hmm.
understand the the uh, the influences that come with it? I mean, it's a tough thing. I mean,
Yeah.
even my
Yeah.
generation
It's really tough.
has trouble dealing with it, So they believe everything they see. Well, seeing is not believing.
Yeah.
So
That's a really great point.
yeah, it's something that
Yeah.
um, I have been talking about for a long time, which is that what we see on the screen. Like you and I are having a real conversation. Um, but not every conversation you see online, not every podcast you see online is is so clearly a real conversation. I mean, we're just meeting one another, and it's it's interesting how so many of the podcasts get edited in order to promote a certain perspective. And I do as I don't want to do any editing. I just want whatever we do to be the content of the podcast. So
Yeah. Yeah. Organic.
organic.
Um, and not trying to like manipulate things into a certain way. And the other thing you're reminding me of in terms of like believing what we're seeing is I've been tricked a few times already by AI. And my kids will be watching, like we're watching, we love to watch fail videos. And my kids will say, "Oh, that's AI." And I'm like, "How can you tell?" And this is like my 11-year-old will tell me, "That's AI." I'll say, "How can you tell?" And they say, "You see this little blurry spot up here? Do you see how this person's hand did this?" And I'm like, man, and I have totally been duped by AI videos. And I consider myself like decently tech savvy enough that I'm not like the person I think is going to get hacked or duped or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I'm already getting duped here.
So if I may say this, there is a great opportunity for your son to see how he can have a very positive influence upon his mother by helping her understand what he sees. And because obviously, if he sees that, then he also is able to discern what's real and what isn't real, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Another thing for him to hear.
I noticed it before and I was trying to like, right. I'm curious about it seems like with parenting, you have a humility that not all parents have, right? Like you tagged your boys in with the Boy Scout meeting. Like, I want to learn from you all. And like, right, like this, like you're saying, like, oh, my son can get of learning from teaching his mother. So where do you think that humility comes from?
That's a great question. I don't, I think it came from, um, just recognizing, well, by the time my children were that age, I had begun my career as a minister and had done work in an urban environment, and then I'd pastored the church for a couple of years in a rural environment, and then I'd gone to work in a small college, and I was seeing the effect of the parenting that was coming from these college students in particular. And so I just realized that it was beyond me to control them. And I never wanted to be in control of it. I just wanted them to be, I wanted them to develop and be whole young men. And I have a daughter too. And I don't think it was humility, Kelly. It really wasn't. There's nothing, it wasn't noble. It was more out of, this is beyond me to be able to fashion some kind of grand plan to develop my children into being these. No, it was really I felt somewhat overwhelmed by it. Not in a bad sense, just the task of raising these children is significant, and so that's kind of where it was, and it was also that I think it's really such a good question. You've really provoked me. I think it's because I had fallen into the world of leadership that I recognized that the challenge of leadership development was not having the right lessons or the right content, but was rather putting people in a position where they could develop their own leadership skills or leadership capacity. As I'm thinking this through as we're talking, I would say that that's probably closer to what I was seeing.
Okay. Yeah. It's reminding me of like what is that called? Like growth mindset, like Carol Dweck type, if you're familiar with her at all.
Hmm. Yes.
School of thought, right? Yeah. And I'm contrasting it in my head with parents that I know who are like, would never listen to a child because the child doesn't know anything, right? And I'm the parent and I make the rules and you're going to do this. And it's just such a different way of
Well, it may be that what we're
piece because I wouldn't have
not,
thought of that. Like, yeah, wanting to.
well, it may be that what we really are talking about is not how I was raising my children, but how I was raised as a child.
Mhm.
And I was very free. I mean, I almost had no parenting. I had parenting, but I almost had no parenting as a child. And I was able just to do whatever I wanted to do. Of course, this was the 1960s. I mean, this was the dark ages. um, and at one point, my grandmother said, "You may do anything you want, but do not bring shame to the family name." So that was the boundary. She set a boundary, but everything else was wide open. And so that being wide open, I wanted for my children too. So that was what I knew. I knew how to live in a kind of a wide open environment where you tried all these different things that you wanted to do. That's probably as much as anything. And that is not what a lot of parents have
Interesting.
learned. Because where the
Yeah.
parents are afraid of making a mistake.
Yeah. It's interesting because I come from a similar background where I really had no boundaries and could do whatever I wanted. Uh, and I think that has made certain aspects of parenting and being able to come up with boundaries and enforce them difficult for me. So not a lot of people have that background, I think, that you and I have of like just having a lot of freedom as a kid and as
Clearly,
a teenager.
totally agree. And then in doing scouting, I saw the entire range of what parents do. And absent parents, overly protective parents, parents that were wanting to be partners with their kid, all those different versions of parenting.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't
Yeah.
think there's one
It's a really,
I don't think it's one way or another. It's you have to somehow focus on your child and say, what is in my child's best interest?
yeah. Right. Because every kid is unique.
That's right. So what did
And
you
one thing
do?
I feel
Oh, sorry.
like go ahead.
What were the
No, go
things
ahead.
that you did as a child which help you to feel a sense of this is who I am and this is what I want to be. Can you pinpoint things that you did as a child that led you in that direction?
Oh, what a great question. Um, I'll think of two things, which is funnily enough in the middle school years. One is actually this might have been more elementary, but yeah, this is elementary. We did the Earth Keepers program when I was in school, and I grew up in a small town, and we had what they called the school farm right next to our school. And so we would go over there, and we had this time where they would walk us through the woods and these trails, and they would, without saying anything, the teacher would point, and it was like the teacher of the school farm. His name was Mr. White. He taught like me and everybody that went to school around, all the years around me, we all know Mr. White. And he would point to a spot, and that was whoever was like at the front of the line, that was their spot. And he would drop the entire class off in different spots around the woods. And we would all just sit there in the woods for like 15 minutes. And there was
Wow.
no assignment. It was just to be. And so we learned about the planet, we learned about nature. And I think that's when I first really like had this embodied feeling that like nature is our home. Like biologically, I think we're just meant to be in nature. And I've loved nature ever since those elementary school years. And then I think the other thing was I had some experiences in middle school, again, going back to growing up in a really small town where most people in my small town looked like me. And so if you were like not white, if you were queer, if you were like a lower socioeconomic status, if you were poor, like you were probably going to be bullied where I grew up. And there was just something about that really, I just had this profound sense. I think now looking back, it's because I'm a really big empath. And so I think I was feeling, wow, what it must feel like to be them and to have people say those things and to come into this building every day. Um, and so that created this sense of like maybe just caring about injustice and caring about people that I've always carried with me. And I think in terms of like seeing suffering and being so aware of suffering, like when I do the leadership work that I do, it's like I see teams and I see people suffering unnecessarily, and it's fixable. And there's skills that we can learn to have better interactions and better engagement so that individuals on the team can have a better life, the company can get a better ROI. So I think those are some of the things that shaped like who I really am at my core and let me know kind of who I am at my core. It's a great question.
It's a great answer. I love that because it that that experience shaped you for what you do now.
100%. 100%. And it's again like the polarities, right? And the polarization. And what happens when we end up in polarized situations is we have a preference for like one side. We start to attach ourselves to that side. And this is not my model. This is a model from some teachers that I've learned it from. The third step is where it really got me. When I started to learn about polarities, I was like, this is why I'm drawn to this. Because first we preference one side, we attach ourselves to that side, it becomes a part of our identity and who we are.
Right?
The third piece is that we other. And that's where we're creating distance between me and that other side, whoever's on the other side. And we feel like I'm right, you're wrong, it becomes us versus them. And we really start to break connection with those people. And I'm a huge believer in connection. I love connecting with people who have different values and different perspectives than me. I don't believe in cancel culture, but give them a path for redemption, give them a path for learning and growth. Um, Maintain connection where it's healthy and where it's safe, like obviously, right?
Yeah.
Um, I just believe in that connectedness and when we start to other and we other to this extreme degree, we like start to dehumanize the people on the other side. And it really brings us to this like either or black and white thinking, which means we're missing out on so much. So those tensions and that polarities, my teachers would say it's an opportunity for learning. It's an opportunity for creativity and growth. And yeah, I love the concepts.
Did you grow up feeling like you fit in?
No, but I think that may be because one of my parents is an alcoholic. And I think that feeling like an outsider is a symptom of growing up with an alcoholic parent. So I'm curious what made you ask that question.
Because your sensitivity to being to the other is often a reflection of feeling like you're the other, and therefore you're have a
Mm.
hypersensitivity to it in a positive sense. See, I felt like I never fit into any group, but I was always included, and they would include me, and for whatever reason, but it didn't feel like I felt like I didn't fit in or didn't belong, and and I've always felt that way. So what you're
Mm.
describing is something I get. Um, and so the way I have addressed that is I reject all labels. And the only thing I'm willing to say is I'm a
Mm.
leadership guy. That's all I'm willing to say. I'm not going to I'm not going to say anything more in terms of any kind of labels, which ends up being kind of a way of marginalizing people. Oh, they're that person, that kind of person. And so they're marginalized into a subset instead of saying, well, I don't necessarily agree with them, but I want to know them. And that's what I think that's what you're saying.
100%, 100%. Because if we put a label on someone, it's almost inherently divisive and less humanistic.
It's a sign of weakness.
Mm.
You mentioned ego. Well, I think the ego requires us to separate ourselves out so that we feel strong and whatever else follows from that.
Mhm.
When I and I think that the culture we've grown up in um, was very oriented towards that, and therefore we grew up seeing difference as a way of defining people instead of seeing difference as a way of including people.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. It reminds me of a quote I heard. You can be, let's see if I can get it right. You can be intentionally inclusive or accidentally exclusive.
hmm, yeah, it is an interesting thing, and I think we pushed the demonization of the other to such an extent that it's no longer beneficial. And I think people who push that are now viewed as having some kind of emotional trauma or mental illness or something like that now. And that what that means is that those of us who are more inclusive, if that is even the right word, but just open, maybe open is just better, are really are going to chart where society goes into the future.
Mhm.
I mean, what do you think?
Interesting premise. It kind of reminds me of that quote. What's the quote about the arc of justice?
I don't know that.
Oh, I can look it up, but I think that it's going to bother me.
Well,
Oh, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
uh, I
So I
hope
think
that's
it,
true. I hope that's true.
yeah, I think as like a species, we are getting better and better. In terms of like, for me, it's about leaning into love and away from fear. And I think fear
Uh-huh.
comes from like what you're talking about, the ego. Like I need to feel like I'm better, right? So I'm better than that other. Um, but how can we lean towards love? And I think as a species, we are kind of on a tipping point of like consciousness and love. And it's like we kind of take two steps forward, one step back, maybe. But I'm really hopeful that as we become more connected, right? Because, like you said, we didn't have smartphones in the 90s, right? So globalization is fairly new. Being able to see in social media what's happening around the world, what people's realities are, is all new. Um, I'm hopeful that we can let love prevail over time. And I'm so curious because I see you smiling and I want to know what you're thinking.
I went all the way through school in segregated schools,
Wow.
and I had no African American friends that were my age until I went to college. I had African American teachers and coaches who had an effect upon me, but I grew up in a totally white environment, and which which had an effect upon me. The effect was not that I felt superior. It was just that, okay, I've been in a kind of a protective environment, so let's. And I remember I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and I remember sitting my freshman year English class, freshman English, was on the second floor of the education building, and there was a street that went by the building. And I remember it was a Friday afternoon. I was sitting in class, and I looked out the window, and a a racial justice march went by the building, probably 25 people or something like that. And I looked out at that and I said, that's really interesting. That was my response. I didn't feel negatively or positive. I just, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't understand that because I hadn't seen that before. So I think that I think this comes back to the parenting thing of helping your children feel okay in their own skin and be secure in who they are. So when they encounter people who are different, whether that difference is a positive thing or it's a conflicted thing, that they are capable of absorbing that. So okay, I don't feel like I have to react to that. I can take it in and then
Yeah.
respond
And what?
and then respond instead of reacting, respond.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Coexist.
yeah. So, what was it that led you into wanting to be a leadership person? What was that initial inspiration or experience?
Yeah. So it was in like 2015. I had the opportunity to be someone's coachee. They were going through Georgetown's leadership coaching program and they needed like guinea pigs to practice on. And so a friend said, "Would you be interested in this? I think you'd be, great for it." And man, that experience changed my life in so many ways. That's when I started meditating and just my coach's ability to listen, my coach's ability to create new awareness and so gently and lovingly reflect things back to me that were potentially like growth edges. It planted the seed and it was like, I don't know if I ever want to be a coach or work in leadership or whatever, but like I want those skills. I want what she's got. And so it had been on my mind for several years. And finally in 2023, so I guess it would have been 8 years later, I was like, you know what? Like my kids are a little older now. I think I'm going to apply to this program. If I get in, I'll do it. And I applied to the same program. I applied to the Georgetown Executive Coaching Program. If I get in, I'll do it. If I don't get in, I won't do it. Fortunately, got in and going through the program, like by month 2, I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in on leadership. Like this is world changing stuff. And I think like having my background in international, like I studied international affairs, like academically, and having worked across, different sectors, it was just, I think that wanting that arc over time to lean towards love, I think leadership is such a great way to do that. So like selfishly for me, I know that I can make environments better. I can help people through this. And it's just fun. I just love the dynamics. I love people. I'm a massive empath, so I feel everything. Like I'm the person in the restaurant that I can see, like, I'm like, oh, that couple is doing, this is what's going on at that table. This is happening. Server just got a bad phone call. Like I can see all of it. And so I always thought everyone had that ability. And I realize now that that's actually a superpower. And so being able to bring that into teams and team environments and then build trust and rapport really quickly so that I can say, help people get a little bit more in alignment and understand what behaviors are doing in the room. It's just the greatest, it's the coolest thing ever.
Oh man, that touches me so because um, there's so many negative messages about leadership today because there's a lot of bad leaders, bad leadership, bad examples of leadership, and having been involved in it at one level or another for 40 years, over 40 years now. It's it's you remind me of myself when I first discovered it. Um, so I don't know what to say. I mean, I just love that. And so, what do you want to know? What you said you wanted to ask some questions. What do you want to ask?
Yeah.
I'm turning
Yeah,
it
it's a
over to you
perfect.
because
Yeah,
you made me speechless.
I want to I know, sorry. I can't
No,
believe
no,
I
no.
said that.
It's perfect. It's really
I would love to learn what got you into leadership, and if I'm reminding you of your journey at the beginning, what's that journey been like?
um I went to college, um, and I did not fit well into that environment because I didn't think like typical college students thought. I was a big picture person. Fortunately, I graduated. There was some doubt because I just, I couldn't read a 500-page book, in a semester, um, because I'm reading every sentence, every paragraph, and I'm analyzing it, you know, and so
Mhm.
it was very, it was poorly suited to do regular college work. And that meant, and this is the 1970s, and and as I reflect back on it, the 1970s was not a great time to be going into the workforce. Because what I recognized later was that the only things that you could do were you could go become a lawyer, become a doctor, you could go become an academic, you could go sell insurance, you could become an accountant. You had all these kind of tradecraft things but at that point in time, the whole thing of entrepreneurship had not emerged, and and so everything was kind of still in that industrial model, and I didn't fit into that at all. So I started doing youth ministry out of college, and then that lasted 2 years, and the people that I worked for said, you're too intellectual for high school kids, and so we're not going to keep you on. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just not intellectual for the kids that you want me to work with. You know, that's a whole other story. So I ended up going to seminary, becoming a minister, and doing urban ministry in Atlanta. And everything outside the door of this big church downtown was my parish. And so I was dealing with poor families and street people and business community and all kinds of different people. And I was invited to join the board of a business association as their clergy representative. And this was a large organization that had 45 members on the board. And I joined that board and I saw something I had never seen before, which was 45 people working as one. And the spectrum of people in that board was from global corporation executives to retired artists or retired people and artists and musicians and small business people and educators. So the spectrum was wide, and they all worked as one. They had a singular mission together, and no one was trying to take it over and run it. And I said, "Oh, this is what leadership is." And and I knew then that was what my calling was going to be. So um, I knew a couple of guys who were both Harvard MBA grads, and they were doing a lot of work for Coke and doing education stuff. And so I took they had a program. So I took their seminar program on leadership, and yeah, this makes sense. Then I started reading books on leadership, and I realized I don't agree with most of what I'm reading because I didn't see leadership as a role or a title in an organization. I saw leadership as how you function as a human being. I didn't have that language at that point, but over the period of the next 15 years, I came to develop a perspective that I call the circle of impact. And the circle of impact is simply that there are three dimensions to leadership. There's the ideas dimension, there's the relationship dimension, and then there's the organizational structure dimension. And they need to be working in alignment, and leaders work the three together so to achieve their goals of creating impact. And impact is a change that makes a difference that matters, different than influence. Impact. We want to create change. And what I recognized in coming to that perspective was nobody was interested in impact. Everybody was interested in maintaining some kind of status quo of their business. And so they weren't interested in change. They weren't interested in growing. And this was then across the spectrum of large companies to small little businesses. And from schools and municipalities and churches, all of them were reflecting the same kind of mindset about structure, which was this is the given, and we cannot change this, and so we just have to work with what we're given, and which I thought was not a very um, wise sort of way of looking at it. So I've been pushing back against a lot of what we call leadership for 40 years because I see it as what you're doing, which is you're enabling people to step out of their own kind of self-contained um, uh, container and discover that they have a whole lot to offer to the world, and all that it requires is for them to take the first step of initiative. And once they start taking initiative and they see a difference that comes from them taking initiative, all of a sudden then they become people who are making a difference in the world. And that's about that leadership story. And so when I was in my early 40s, in the mid 90s, I left the college where I had been working and we moved back to North Carolina and I started a consulting practice, which I did for 20 years. And until it run its course. And for the last 10 years, I've been basically writing and podcasting.
Wow. I'm impressed that you just yeah, I just started up a consulting firm because I'm trying to do that right now and it seems difficult. I feel like you made
Well,
it sound easy.
so here's how it happened. I had never been a consultant, had never started a business, but I knew how to talk to people, and I'm sure you know how to talk to people. We were living in West Virginia. We moved to North Carolina. There were three guys in West Virginia that I knew, and they said, "Oh, when you get down there, call my friend, so and so. Here's his phone number." And and so I got down here. I got down to North Carolina, and I called those three guys. I said, "So and so says I need to get to know you. I'd like to come tell you what I'm interested in doing." So I go and tell them, and my phrase was, "I'm interested in encouraging and equipping people to take personal initiative to create impact in their local communities." And and that was all basically all I was saying. And I said, and this is then this becomes the money phrase. Who do you know that you think I should know, and would you introduce me? So I never asked these people for work. I asked them for connections to people they thought I should know, or they thought that that person should know me. And so they gave me between 10 and 15 names and phone numbers, and I called all of them, and it started a cycle of relationship. And almost all of the work that I did for the next 20 years came through introductions from people. So the networking thing really does work.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And that
I'm
and that is
curious in your work.
and that's what stands. This is what
Oh, go ahead.
the podcast is built around. So the podcast is built around people who have been recommended to me that they should be.
Yeah, I'm already thinking of someone I I think would be a great connection. Um, okay. So when you described what you think of as leadership and what you wanted to do, what came up for me is the times in my life that have been the most empowering and people have led me is when they have helped me to believe in myself when I may not have seen that potential or believed in myself, but them believing in me shifted. So does that feel like kind of what Like, does that align with what you were thinking and doing in leadership and then what you did for those 20 years and kind of your beliefs? Or are there distinctions there between like kind of my experience and what you were doing?
I um I presented myself as a problem solver and a
Hmm.
process person. So I would talk with, I would meet someone and I would talk with them about the three patterns of behavior that I saw: the lack of ability to think clearly, the lack of relationships of respect and trust, and the dominance of structure, which inhibited people from doing their very best work. And I would be asking them, so do you see any of this happening in your organization? And always, yeah, they would shake their head. So I said, well, let's address this. And what I found was it's one thing to see what is wrong, it's another thing to change it and to actually develop a plan for changing that. And that was a greater inhibitor than the structure itself. That people's sense of what is possible, that they had been somehow conditioned not to believe that they could overcome the biggest things ever, and they couldn't change, and for whatever reason. And so I did that for 20 years. I found myself being asked into situations that were complex, very conflict oriented. It was a really wide spectrum of things. And then after the recession of the late 2000s, everything began to fall apart because nobody wanted a process person. Nobody wanted to solve problems. They just wanted money. Can you get us more money? Or no, we're going to just wait until this thing changes. Well, it never changed. So I ended up having to change myself. So there's more to that story, but I don't know if I'm answering your question, because what I did was I developed this model called the circle of impact. So you see ideas, relationships, and structure, and the connecting
Hmm.
ideas are values, purpose, vision, and impact. And I would put that in front of them. And I think they were so used to kind of a linear, kind of binary way of looking at things. It was difficult for a lot of people to understand what this simple little image was.
Hmm.
And so I would say to them, well, which of the three dimensions, ideas, relationships, or structure, which one do you think is the problem, the source of the problem? And they would say, well, they would say something. I said, well, the other two dimensions are our resources for fixing it. So that was how we got to the idea of creating alignment. But if there's a linear path, it begins with what are our values and how do we find the people who share those values and how do we create a vision for impact together that then allows us to say, this is the kind of structure we need to have.
Yeah, I love that. It always starts with values, right?
It does. And it's the thing that gets lost in the mix often.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really brilliant. I love your diagram and that model that you came up with, that framework.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think
Hmm.
it's difficult to practice because people do not see themselves taking a model like that and applying it in an environment where they're going to change something. People don't like change, and they just soon know that they need to change and not change than changing. And I've changed,
Right.
and I'm a change agent, and I change all the time. So I don't
Right.
understand it, but I don't understand it because But I think it comes back
Right.
to
Human nature,
original.
right?
Well, it comes back to the thing you talked about very at the very beginning about ego. I think the ego gets in the way of change. When you're willing to sacrifice your ego for a greater good, then you'll change.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think ego can show up pretty heavily, and does impact teams' abilities to function. And I think in terms of just straight change, sometimes it's like, and I love this so much. Like I love looking at humans from like a zoological perspective. Like we are mammals that have brains that do certain things that we've evolved to have for our survival, right? So it's
Right.
like we don't like change because we want the consistency. We want to know what we know. We like pattern, we like routine. And so anything that's going to, I mean, I guess it makes sense why humans might not like change. And then we can go, okay, so what is it about the brain we're going to need to get ahead of? And how can, like you're saying, how can we use the other parts of the brain as a resource to get around, the avoidance of change? I love that framing too, using the other parts as a resource.
I
Yeah.
think I think it comes back to the importance of relationships, and that when we find ourselves in relationships where we respect one another, we trust one another, there's some level of mutual accountability and affirmation. At that point, then we can together find ways
Mhm.
to create change. Um, and that's and that and if that's the larger lesson from all of this, it is that it's really our relationships with one another that matter above all. And obviously you're very aware of that. I think in what you've described as the work you do. And but it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, people are so multifaceted and so unique. Uh, it is a challenge to maintain those relationships sometimes.
So let me ask you one last question before we're done. Do you have hope for the future? And if so, where do you find your hope?
That's a great question. I do have hope for the future, and I find it in humans who are on paper supposed to be polarized from each other, being kind to each other.
Mhm.
I find it in there's a viral meme going around right now of someone finishing the Boston Marathon and he falls down and these other two runners come, and to what you're saying, right? Like being willing to sacrifice your own ego, right? Like they gave up their time that they had trained months for to help another human. So there is, I think when we can just love people and want to help each other and be willing to do that even when we have those different labels, um, that gives me hope. I see that. I see that. And I think we just have to have our bias towards that and our positivity going towards that, looking for that because we have a tendency for the negativity bias, but we have to focus on the positive and choose to see that instead.
Very much agree with you. Well, thank you for being with us today. It's been great. I feel like we could go on forever. And
We could talk forever, that's for sure. I do. I felt the same thing.
it'd be a whole lot more fun if we were in the same room
Yes.
with your
Where
kids, with your kids there.
are you in North Carolina now?
Yes, I am in Winston-Salem.
One of them just came in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Winston-Salem. Okay. I'm up in Columbia, Maryland. If you ever come up this way, we should try to meet up.
Okay. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. So thank you very much for being
Yes.
with us today. And thank you all for watching. I hope you take away from this something which challenges your notion that you don't have anything to offer to the world. You do, and you have to decide that yourself. But there are probably other people who have said this to you, and I think you should listen to them because they believe in you. And so if they believe in you, then you should believe in yourself. And maybe you should go try something that you maybe it's not in your comfort zone, but if you did it and you discovered that it worked, maybe we'll find something new that helps you see that you can be a person of impact and be a leader for your community. I hope that would be the case. And listen to her and follow her and maybe even contact her for support in that, because I think this is the way we're going to move through the next challenging years that we have facing us. So thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.